Good morning, everyone. Can we get a quick mic check so that we can make certain our audio is in line with our video?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good
Good morning.
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, we'll get started in just a second.
Well, I'm trying to get my picture to show up, but it's not.
Okay. There may be someone in the chat that might be able to help you. Otherwise, Haiti, would you like to help us all as we get started? Do you have anything for us?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am glad to see a lot of your faces today. If you are able to be on screen, please be on screen. We are still going to continue our in-depth conversations today. So we would love to see your faces. Other than that, I don't see anybody with any names. I see everybody's first and last. Yep, that's it. Over to you, Clary.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we are geared to go for session 4 of our bias training. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if I said, welcome to session 1 of bias training. Thank you all so much for being here. And we were starting all over. Okay, that was a lot funnier in my head, never mind. Okay, so we're gonna get started today. We've got a pretty ambitious schedule. We wanna start just by doing a little bit of a review. Remember that the chat is open for those of you that have questions or statements that you want on record. My email address is available for anyone who needs to send something anonymously. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen so that we can do a little bit of a review as we get into what we wanna discuss today. In the way of review, bias is that disproportionate area or that weight in favor of or against an idea or thing, usually in the way of something that's closed-minded, prejudicial, or unfair. Biases can be innate or learned. People may develop biases for or against an individual, a group, or a belief. In science and engineering, a bias is a systematic error. And so next week, we're headed towards the beloved community. We'll talk about that obviously more next week, but today is going to be part 2 of so what now? Like, what do we do with this information? We're going to talk about why a lot of the systemic issues exist. We're also going to talk through what it looks like to develop a personal plan and a framework for us. And so I'm going to get started with that in just a minute, but I do want to say something here because it seems as though the events of last night with regards to what took place and did not take place in Atlanta, it seems as though it may have been something associated with something that may have been racially motivated. We're not aware of anything. We only know what has been promoted and suggested to us through our media outlets and various news sources. But at the latest count, I have 8 people that have lost their lives in Atlanta. These were workers of spas, and they appear to all be from the Asian American community. There has been a rise in hate crimes with regards to the Asian American community since the pandemic hit. I'm not going to make any particular associations as to why what happened last night happened, but we do know that there has been a rise in hate crime towards the Asian American community, and there's been a rise in rhetoric encouraging hate towards the Asian American community, particularly because it has been referred to some people as the pandemic being started by people that are from Asia, such as, China, etc. So I just wanted to bring that information out in as responsible of a way as I possibly could to say this. On behalf of our Asian brothers and sisters, we want you to know that you are our friends. You are our brothers and you are our sisters. And if this has anything to do with bias, I apologize. I'm sorry that you're going through this. This to me feels like what happened when a man went into a church in my hometown in Charleston, South Carolina, and apologize, and killed 9 people that were having Bible study. As far as I know, these are citizens of this country that just went to work, and potentially, because of harmful things that have been said against people groups, they're no longer on earth. So my heart goes out to my Asian brothers and sisters. With that said, let's start for today. We're going to start with the Dr. Susan Moore incident that we ask everybody to do homework on. We're going to look at that video, and then on the other side, we're going to hear your thoughts.
This is the second worst day here at IU North. Yesterday, a Dr. Bannock, B-A-N-N-E-C, wanted to send me home. You're not even short of breath. I said, yes, I am. I was in so much pain from my neck. My neck hurt so bad. I was crushed. It made me feel like I was a drug addict. The CT went down a little bit into my lungs, and you could see new pulmonary infiltrates, new lymphadenopathy all throughout my neck. And all of a sudden, yes, we'll treat your pain. You have to show proof that you have something wrong with you. I put forward and I maintain. If I was white, I wouldn't have to go through that. This is how Black people get killed. When you send them home and they don't know how to fight for themselves. I had to talk to somebody, maybe the media, somebody, to let people know how I'm being treated up in this place.
Today, we're going to be having a very important yet difficult conversation about racism within healthcare, social disparities within the healthcare system, and to see what actionable things we can do to fight back. I'd like to send our condolences to Dr. Moore's family and a commitment that I'm going to make a donation on their GoFundMe page. I'm linking that down below as well if you'd like to contribute to. In order to have this in-depth discussion, I've invited special guest Dr. Khadija Ray, a pediatric anesthesiologist and founder of the group Physician Women SOAR. Let's get right into it. The difficult part of having this conversation after the fact is that because of patient privacy rules, the institution cannot really adequately say what was happening, what the results were. We can only go by the information that was released by Dr. Moore herself. My question to you is, based on her videos and her writings on Facebook, how did the topic of racism enter the conversation, and how should we be thinking about it when we're considering her own situation?
Yeah, I think after a certain amount of time of this treatment and this denial of how serious her symptoms were as she perceived them and as we perceive them, being told, well, you're really not short of breath. I mean, anybody watching that video, you don't have to have a medical degree to appreciate that she could barely finish her sentences. One thing that we try to explain to people in the work that I do is that we know what racism looks like, just like a woman knows what sexism looks like. There are things in the way people interact, certain things that are said, microaggressions, macroaggressions, where you know what it looks like. And that's what she felt was happening. And she put that name to it. She felt that it became, or it was racially driven. And maybe the doctor didn't even realize that was driving him. And we can talk about that more later. But there was, after a point of being mistreated and mishandled, she felt that it was racism.
And I've seen your response, but with the Physician Women SOAR group, to the response that the organization gave as to what they thought was a breakdown in communication. And one of the main things you pointed out was that they did not even address the word racism in their response. Ideally, how would you have had that conversation? Say you were in that position of authority overseeing this incident. How would you have used the word racism? What would have been the ideal approach there?
Well, I mean, I understand that when you're in the shoes of a big organization, I'm sure they had their PR people and their lawyers and everybody else kind of help craft that statement. But if I was in a position where I'm making a statement and I want to have an honest conversation, you have to be transparent and you have to not take away what a person is saying. You have to listen to what the person is saying. We can't, as institutions, make pledges to do better regarding social justice, racial justice, and then not listen when you're being told that you missed the mark.
Okay. Let's get some thoughts. We had an opportunity to kind of review that since we did it as a part of our pre-work. Obviously, there's a lot of context now of things that are going on that have added layers in a contemporary context. So what are your thoughts?
My name's Robin Tucci. I'm going to bring up a different kind of bias. This is going to be a difficult story for me to tell, so please bear with me. My brother was 29 years old. They thought he had the flu. They took him to the hospital. The hospital released him, said he just had the flu. That same night, my brother didn't have the flu. He had what is called streptococcus pneumonia. His lungs collapsed and he died. He was 29 years old. Now, my brother was white, but however, he was disabled. And I know 29 is awfully young to die. We were very close. But I wanted to bring up that disabled people have the same bias as some of, what they're talking about, because they think, oh, it's just that, and they didn't look closer into it. And when I saw that video, that's what it made me think of.
Yeah. Robin, I'm sorry for the loss of your brother, and my heart goes out to you. I'm sure this must be a difficult time for you and your family. But Robin is correct that bias is not just relegated to race or a particular people group. So oftentimes we we talk about race, and we have intentionally done this for this class. We've talked about bias in the context of race because it's a little easier to do that. We only had 5 hours that we wanted to condense our sessions towards. And so we've got 5 hours to talk about bias. What's the easiest way for us to get the information so that people can have their own next steps? The leadership decided that we would do that with regards to race. But there's bias that happens in more than race, as Robin pointed out. It can happen for people that are able-bodied versus people that have disabilities. Disabilities can be physical disabilities, or they can be, mental disabilities or emotional disabilities, right? There are a number of ways that people can be disparately treated, or when they treat people groups differently just because of something that they don't have any control over. That in and of itself is a version of racism, as we'll see here shortly. But we often don't think of it in that context, but it certainly is bias against a people group.
I want to jump in too. This is Michelle.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. I am actually down taking care of my mother, and I came down, this fits in perfectly with this, because I came down to be her advocate. She's elderly, and she had to have back surgery and wasn't doing well. And she potentially may have to go back to the hospital. And she's so frightened of that place because of the way she was treated there. And it has to do with the elderly. I've been to several of her appointments. I watch how they treat them down here, and it's infuriating to me. It's infuriating.
Sorry, Michelle. And you're bringing up another one. If there was a theme outside of our objective, we listed this course by objective. So this is like, so what now? But if there was a theme, it would be entitled "Injustice Anywhere is a Threat to Justice Everywhere," which is a famous quote from Dr. King. And so we have seen injustices with regards to potentially Susan Moore, race, being an African American, Robin, a disability. Now we have Michelle with ageism.
Yep. Very much so.
These are the things that have been used to divide us, and they're sociological constructs. They're made up things. Instead of us helping one another, younger people like myself, or like I like to think I am, we're supposed to be helping those that are older because we stand on their backs. If not for them paying taxes so that we can have, a society, and, helping us to get jobs, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we wouldn't be here. And we're all, sorry, go ahead, Julie.
Oh, sorry.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I just want to say that it was a rough quarter for IU. We also lost Dr. Wallace, who was a pediatric chief resident, who died after giving birth, another African-American physician. So we just don't do a good job.
Oh. Wow, I hadn't heard about that. Thank you for sharing.
I guess my point is, these are women in the, in the profession. If they can't advocate for themselves in a system that we've just said is, struggling with racism, ageism, sexism, they are physicians. You can't be more of an advocate in the medical field than being a physician yourself. And if these women can't get the care they need, it should make us worried for our loved ones who don't have advocates when they're in the medical field. And I'm a pediatrician, so I'm supposed to be part of the solution, right?
Thank you for pointing that out. I think about that, and we've mentioned that in a few of the other sessions. If Dr. Moore, a physician in her own network, in her own healthcare system, the Indiana healthcare system, these were her colleagues. If she can't navigate this system, then what about those of us that don't know the lingo, right? What about people that may not have as much money as Dr. Moore presumably has, you know, because she had a job. I don't know how much money she really has, but she had a job, right? There are some people that don't have what she has. They don't have access. They may not even have insurance. Thank you for pointing that out. Any other thoughts on the Dr. Moore case?
Well, sometimes
Sorry, go ahead.
sometimes we think that knowledge is the answer, right? But with the CEO of IU, he was basically saying that the staff may have been intimidated by her knowledge, which is scary, you know, to kind of have that take and assume that just because she knows more about her body and, you know, the way that it's operating, that somehow is a problem. And I also think that COVID in itself has been a discrimination piece, because I'm very familiar with what I heard and her voice, and just some of the things that she was experiencing and some of the things that we're hearing. And, you know, they were very dismissive. I felt extremely concerned, you know, with the way that doctors and every medical professional was treating some of us who maybe didn't have to go into the hospital, but they still weren't listening. They were still saying, well, it seems like you can breathe okay. Like, you know, you can somehow get through here. They don't know what they're doing when it comes to COVID, and they need to acknowledge that, rather than assuming that when we're living with it and trying to deal, that, you know, that they somehow have the answers when it's this new. It was a very triggering video to me, and I think it's awful. I mean, I'm just saddened by her story, but there's so many, and it's just infuriating, honestly.
It really is. It really is. It's been a very hard year for a lot of people, and you know, there's still a weightiness that's on it. Whenever there are disasters, then minority groups, such as people that are disabled, even females, including white females in America, by the way, because they're still seen as a minority group, because they're not the dominant culture being white males. But just stay with me. Whenever there are disasters, whether it's, you know, a hurricane, or in this case a pandemic, some type of an economic disaster that, you know, may be man-made, whatever the case is, minority groups are often disproportionately affected by that. And so whenever you see that, you know, FEMA, you know, from the federal government, Federal Emergency Management Association, I think is what the A stands for, like when you see them coming in, they're often coming in to try and mitigate the damages that are happening predominantly to minority groups. Now, they have to help everybody, but when we look at the numbers, and the pandemic is one of those great examples, the minority groups are usually the ones that are disproportionately affected because of access and et cetera, et cetera. We're going to find out more about that in just a minute. But if you're a part of helping to heal, like a Dr. Moore, you shouldn't have to complain and argue for your life if there are things that can potentially save you. So, okay, let's add another layer. Any other questions, thoughts about that? Let's add another layer. We'll continue to talk about, you know, Dr. Moore and what have you, but we're building something here.
I had one. I'm
Right.
sorry. I had one. I'm
Go ahead.
gonna piggyback off of Dairo. I have a grandmother whose native country is Mexico. So she had to have a translator with her. And I just believe there's negligence in the hospital, I don't care attitude, because also my grandfather died in the hospital. He had a stroke and he was in his vomit for 2 hours before they came in and even checked on him. And he was also he didn't speak a lot of English, and he also was from Mexico. So I just think there's negligence, period. Like there's just this I don't care attitude, or we'll get to you later. And I don't even think it's a race thing, because there was all races there working with him. It's just the way that I guess they handle things now. But Dairo did say language is another trigger for bias, and it is. If you don't speak English, then they're like, okay, they try to rush you out. They don't want to deal with you, or okay, let's just hurry up and get, let's just try to, don't really like give you the time to try to investigate, okay, what's really wrong with this person. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, you're not a recipient of the care that you deserve, the care that you pay for through tax dollars, et cetera, particularly if it's a public hospital, but even if it's a private hospital. I think we can do better. Let's take a look at some of these social determinants. Did somebody else want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I've got to keep in mind that just as with police officers or any occupation, they're bad seeds. Just because someone's a doctor or a nurse doesn't mean they should be. And not necessarily are they in it for the right reasons. And so I think sometimes care stems off of that. As a prior long-term IU employee, I know that they are very money driven. But in my unit, as a trauma unit, I never witnessed a doctor mistreat anyone. But that doesn't mean that they're not out there. Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah, I think Tammy has a very valuable perspective. All perspectives are valuable. But I'm glad that she's highlighting something that we hadn't previously spoken about, which is that there are some bad seeds. Let me say this, because I do not want to dismiss the bad seeds or highlight it so much that we think it's only bad seeds. But here's one of the things that we have found. We found that often there are systems that either produce bad seeds or that allow bad seeds. And so often we think, oh, let's just pick out these bad seeds that are in here, and then we should be okay. And then we realize, my gosh, we still have bad seeds. What's going on? And then you pick out a few more bad seeds, and it's like, well, there's still some rottenness here. What's going on? And then we realize that there's something that's happening in this little basket where we're picking out these bad seeds that's causing more rotten apples. I hope I'm making sense. I'm kind of mixing metaphors here a little bit. But what I'm basically trying to say is there are often systems that are in place that we have to change or correct or redo or restructure the system, or else it will continue to either produce the things that we don't like, or it will allow the things that we don't like, whatever that is and whatever we don't like. Am I making sense, or is this totally confusing? And if it is confusing, I apologize. I can clarify if necessary. Is this making sense? Little head nod?
Can
Okay,
I
yes,
had a thought earlier, because I wondered sometimes about the field of medicine because of the financial aspect, and people that go into medicine because they want to take care of people, as opposed to people that go into medicine strictly because of the financial aspect. And you bringing up the idea that there is this the bad seed institution where you think of these systems that are set up the way, and then it goes all the way into education and colleges and kids that are able to get into schools because of their family, and it's such a systemic issue when it comes to why the people are there to provide the care. Are they there to provide the care because they have this drive to help others, or is it financial? And that bad seed issue kind of plays into that. If you're not in medicine because you have this altruistic notion that it's everybody deserves healthcare, as opposed to I'm here to make money and I got to get out of this hospital and out of this ER so I can get into private practice because that's where the money is. And then resenting the people that come into these emergency rooms because they can't pay for healthcare or they don't have jobs. And it just, the whole problem is it just propagates itself over and over and over again.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Here's my one example to show you how real things are and how it can permeate any institution. So if I was to scroll around my little room here, I'm back in Chicago. I previously been filming and helping out my parents who are elderly in Carolina. So I've been filming from my dad's office in Carolina, but now I'm back in Chicago. And if I was to scroll around the room, you'd be able to see, I like I told you from week one, I played football at the University of Alabama. So you'd see some, the Alabama stuff. Well, as I was looking at that, as Valerie was talking, it reminded me that there are some football players that just join football to hit people. Like they want to hurt people. They enjoy seeing people in pain. Okay, you can legally do that, but there's some people that will do it outside the rules of football. In other words, they want to give people concussions because they just want to, they want to see people in pain. Now, so what football has to do is football, the organization, whether it's the little league version of football or if it's the NFL, they've got to weed out the people that aren't really trying to play football. They're really just trying to spare people with their heads and cause them to go to the hospital because there are people that for some reason, that's what they want to do. Okay. And they use football as their license to do it. So football has to weed out those folks. And then they've got to make sure that systems, so whether it's the little league, college, like I played, or because they are sanctioning bodies, or the NFL, they also have to make sure that their system is not promoting people getting hurt, having concussions, CTE. You all probably have heard of like CTE, from the movies or something like that. They've got to make sure that they've got a system where people can be healthy and still play the game. Okay. But there's a system that has to do that. And so if you find out that, the numbers are going up on the people that have CTE and the head injuries and the concussions, et cetera, if the organization doesn't do anything about that, then they are in essence condoning it. And if we translate that analogy to healthcare or to police departments or to schools, because we have, bad quote unquote apples with teachers that are abusive, et cetera. I mean, we can translate that to just about any context. If there aren't any rules in place, then now the bad seeds can be actually produced by the system. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the system. And feel free to maybe text or email me offline. You can certainly put something in the chat. I'll be trying to respond to that as much as I can if there's some further clarification that needs to happen there. All right, here are the layers that we want to really address. These are social determinants of health. So this is some of the information that we've been talking about. To be clear, we are doing bias training. So our responsibility, or at least a part of our responsibility, is to make certain that we're not giving you information that's biased, because then we would be defeating the purpose of the training. This is information that I'm sharing that comes from the current administration and the previous administration. They are responsible, when I'm talking about administration, the presidential administration, they are responsible for the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control. I think everybody here has heard of that. Okay. And so the CDC under the previous administration, which was President Trump's administration, and the current administration, they both say the same thing. This information has been affirmed by both. So it is apolitical. This is not just, one side. It's not a liberal policy. It's not a conservative statement. This is what both sides agree on. The CDC says that people from racial and ethnic minority groups are disproportionately affected by difficulties finding affordable and quality housing. This may limit their housing options to neighborhoods and residences with mostly other racial and ethnic minority groups, crowded conditions, and that lack access to reliable transportation. These conditions may make illnesses, diseases, and injuries more common and more severe when experienced. Let me continue. In some cultures, it is common for family members of many generations to live in one household, which could lead to exposure for older adults who are at an increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19. Let me continue. People from racial and ethnic minority groups are disproportionately affected by lack of access to quality health care, health insurance, and/or linguistically and culturally responsive health care. Inequities in treatment. Now, the government is saying that there are inequities in treatment based on people that are a part of racial and ethnic minority groups, which means you will live, your mortality rates or your morbidity rates, they are higher just because you are a racial or ethnic minority. Such barriers increase risk for poor health and health outcomes by limiting health promotion, disease and injury prevention, and condition management activities. Let me continue. People from racial and ethnic minority groups are disproportionately represented in essential work settings, such as healthcare facilities, farms, factories, food production and processing, grocery stores, and public transportation. People who work in these settings have more chances to be exposed to COVID-19. Let me continue. People from some racial and ethnic minority groups have lower incomes, experience barriers to wealth accumulation, and carry greater debt. Such challenges may make managing expenses, paying medical bills, and accessing affordable quality housing, nutritious food, and reliable childcare difficult. Last one, people from racial and ethnic minority groups are also disproportionately affected with regards to inequities in access to high quality education. Now, just by the showing of your hand, what does education have to do with disease prevention? We're talking about healthcare. We're in healthcare. What does education have to do with that? You can go ahead and speak up if you don't mind unmuting your mic. Where's the nexus there? That if I don't have I don't have access to a quality education, that all of a sudden I may not live as long. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
But just taking a stab at it, I assume that if it's kind of like a cycle, if you don't have the education, then you technically probably won't have the job. Then if you don't have the job or the finances, then you won't have the food and all of that. So then your income has to be more, I guess, prioritized, and you're not able to have all the good quality food or, I guess the things that you would technically need to be healthy. And so that causes disease. It could cause disease.
Absolutely. My parents, they love fried foods, but they battle diabetes. So I found a way, because of education, to show them how they can still eat fried foods in moderation through an air fryer. And because of the air fryer that I chose, they can save 80% on average with their caloric intake. Now, without getting into the technical terms, they almost immediately, when I say immediate, over the span of a month or two, started losing weight and started seeing other healthier outcomes with regards to their visits to the doctor. Now, they're elderly, and so they'll see stuff in certain cases quicker because of the ability to be able to reduce some of the negative things, but that is because of education. When you're smart enough, hey, I don't need to be eating all the junk, because when you fill your body with junk, I might get, these little energy spurts from sugar, but it hurts me down the road. When you get a level of education, you realize, hey, I got to put some fresh produce in my body and not all the canned stuff, because the canned stuff has preservatives. I can go on and on and on. But
that's assuming you're in a community
yes.
that has access to fresh stuff.
I'm sorry, Julie, I was talking over. Would you
I
say
said
that
that's assuming you're in a community that has access to fresh stuff. We have
Absolutely.
a lot of food deserts, even in our, right, and even in Marion County, we have a lot of food deserts. So, you're assuming that even with we have to be careful that even if you're well educated you may still be in a community that doesn't have access to that.
Yeah, which is a different level of education, and it's a different level of access, which is what the CDC is talking about with regards to neighborhoods. You're hitting the nail on the head there, Julie. That's it. Okay, so here's what we wanted to do. We promised that we would talk about why these things are going on. Remember, there's a sociological construct that, and we know what's going on, right? And we can choose one way or the other to think about it, because there are two different ideologies. There's one ideology that says there is a race that's going on. Of course, there's going to be one winner. But there's another ideology that says we can find a way to help everybody win. We can find a way to help everybody have access to fresh produce. There should be some basic human rights that we all have access to fresh produce, that we all have access to quality education and affordable housing. There should be some basic human rights. That's one ideology, but the other ideology says, nope, we've got to create a race. And when we create this race, then some people will be disadvantaged, but it's too bad, so sad. It's the survival of the fittest. So I'm going to show you two short videos. One of them is a cartoon that talks about bias with regards to race. And then the second one is a real life exercise that we often do with sociologists when we would have live classes. But because we don't have a live class, you'll have to see the experiment that's done. So it's two short videos with regards to race, and we'll talk about that on the other side. Any questions before I play the video, or any other comments? I didn't want to cut anyone off. Okay, all right, let's take a look at this video.
We're about to race. Everybody line up. Shoulder to shoulder. Take off your backpacks. Basketball, line up. We're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. A $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go!
All right. What are your thoughts after seeing that those were 2 examples, one of them an exercise to show us why the sociological construct of race exists? Your thoughts? Kendra, you've been sitting there contemplative. Your thoughts?
I actually seen these videos before. It's what we live. We've been set back 400 years, and as we try to progress forward, a lot of stumbling blocks, a lot of roadblocks still come up. Honestly, I think it has to do with a lot of mindset for not only the ones who've contributed to us being in this position, but also ourselves, on how we perceive ourselves and how to move ahead effectively.
Thank you.
So I'm just interested to hear what other thoughts people have on how to be a part of the solution and not the problem.
Yeah. It's a lot to navigate and still do your job and still be those of you all that are moms, or you have a spouse, you still have to go on with regular life, and you have the weight of navigating the biases that may be against you if you're in one of those people groups that's disproportionately affected. Any of the minority groups, you're female, gender bias, you're disabled, you've got disability bias, you're a little older, ageism, etc. I can go on and down the line. Sexual orientation, religion, socioeconomic status. It's not just skin color. It's a lot to navigate. It's a lot to navigate. And these are things, by the way, that we have no control over. That's why we're talking about being a part of the solution, because we don't have any control over with the permanent color of my skin. We can get tans during the season, during particular seasons, but we have any control over that. Other thoughts? Thank you, Kendra.
This is Edna. I think it just shows how tiresome it is for people, especially us Black people and other people of other races. I'm speaking of me because I'm me. It's just tiresome on a daily basis, that you try your best to do your best, and then all these things you're still confronted with. And like within this group right here, we're, having the conversations and everything, and we're working at it, just say within this organization, but maybe outside too. But, there's so many other people out there that are, and things that are against us. And it just gets tiresome because, no matter what you do, you can still be confronted with just different things. You can go to the store and be confronted with it. And it's just tiresome.
Yeah. And I don't want to speak for anybody else in the group, but you're probably not the only one feeling that way, even in this session. Okay, so here's what I need from you all. I need to know how we can best resource you. So let's think about that critically. You understand why things are happening. So you can point to any of these things when you're having conversations with people that are in your sphere, right? Or even when you're wrestling with it internally, like, what do? I know this is going on. I know why it's going on. And I know people are choosing one of two ideologies, generally speaking, in America. Either, figure it out. This is a race. Come on, use the system to do what you've got to do. Don't complain, put your head down, work, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Hey, there's a path for success here. Follow the path. Or wait a second, let's figure out a way to restructure things, because there's a way for us all to help one another. And if we all help one another, that means we may have to dismantle some of the systems that are disproportionately affecting us. So those are the two general trains of thought. Okay, so now the question is, what can we do, we being Anthem leadership and me particularly in this case, what kind of homework can I have in order to serve you going forward? Because we've got 1 hour and 6 minutes left for you to understand bias. We've got one more, not today. It's not 1 more hour today. It's the next session. We've got 1 more hour. That's it. And 5.5 minutes. So what can we do? So I'm going to give you some categories. And if you don't mind just raising your hand, I'm going to toggle back and forth between the two screens as I give you these categories so that you can best help me figure out which category you fit in. And if I don't list something that you think would be helpful because you've been thinking about this over the last few weeks, then you can share that as well when I get finished with the categories, if that's okay. Any questions about that? All right. So we know some of you receive information best through printed materials. So whether it's audio books or printed books, that's how you receive information. So if I can give you more books in the way of resources, then that would, or printed materials, online articles, journals, etc. That's your way to receive it, and that's the way for your sphere to receive it. Your little inner circle. Let me see your hands. Okay. Okay, thank you. Session 4 a.m. Wednesday.
If you're not on screen, use the raise hand function so he can see you, or type it in the chat, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Haiti. Okay, our second group, we want to check on like docu-series, like maybe you like to binge Netflix, just kind of watching, documentaries, or you learn history visually. Let me see your hands if that's your thing. Obviously, it doesn't have to be Netflix. It could be, other YouTube clips, etc. Okay.
Can we do more than one?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. Okay. Got you. Okay. Some people learn better by going through these sessions. Now, these sessions are great ways to introduce things, but unless you're participating practically, most people don't learn through lectures. That's why we tried to change it. So it wasn't as much me talking, and we tried to, make it more of a facilitation, but you're not going to learn as much if I'm doing all the talking. But some people do like sessions like this. So not this session, but other sessions, if there were other themes and courses that we could point you to, whether it's through Anthem or just doing it on your own. Let me see your hands if you, if maybe that might be something good that, to kind of raise your awareness, other sessions. Thank you. Okay, got you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, got you. Okay, here's the last category that we've tried to deduce things to. But again, if there's one or two others, please mention it. One other category is an intense version of learning. So if you feel as though if this was a college course, you would really want to dive in, because the way that you learn things is by really diving into the most intense version possible, because people learn things differently. So if your way of learning is, hey, give me the 401 level. Give me the 401 level. Let me get the highest level, and I'm going to start there, even if I've got to kind of fumble my way forward. Let me see your hand if you like the intense grab, and you really want, maybe you've done some of these bias trainings already, and you really want to see how high of a level you can get. Okay, thank you, Whitney. Okay, so I've got Whitney. Let me just make sure I've got everybody. Okay, Haiti, did you want to capture these names, or you want me to? Because I can capture these.
I think it was Whitney, Lori. I saw Dairo's face or hand, not face. Sorry, Dairo. I see your face too.
Tammy Harp.
And was that clap you raising your hand? Kelly. And I think that's it.
I've got Jillian Galvin, and I have Tammy Harp. And I'll make it easy, everybody. Just remember your names: Tammy Harp, Jillian. I've got Robin Tucci,
Lori, Dairo, and I think that's it.
I think so. Did we? And don't hesitate to correct me if I mispronounce your name. That's not my intention. So did we mention everyone that wanted to just kind of really see how far they can dive into it, and then maybe they can work their way backwards to help us? Did we get everyone? Okay. All right. So all of those folks, so Tammy and Jillian and everybody that said that you wanted the intense group, we need you to contact Haiti today. Haiti's going to give you your assignment. That assignment has to be completed by session 5. You're actually going to present your findings session 5. Okay. All right. Any questions about that? All right. The rest of us come prepared for your last analysis, your last questions, your thoughts, for session 5, because we're going to conclude at that point. Let me just say one last little thing. I mentioned injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And the reason why I mentioned that is because a lot of us, we look at the race little examples and experiments that we did. And we were like, man, it's a bummer to be in the back. How can we win if the $100 is synonymous with access to affordable housing and affordable quality education and quality affordable healthcare, et cetera? That's what the $100 is synonymous to. And that's why it's called a race, because it's a race to access. It's a race to resources. So that's what they mean by race. They're dividing you and they're telling you, okay, this group, you go to the back, or this group you can advance because you're in this particular people group. So that's what the construct is all about. But my quick little 20-second thing here is that I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of countries, and one of them, the privilege of doing this type of work and learning about different cultures, one of them is Uganda, and they are the third poorest country on earth. Their healthcare system is such that the ground is dirt and the ceiling, it's open air. That's what their hospitals look like. You have to pay for your medicine or equipment before you get it. So if you need a shot, you've got to pay for the syringe before they give it to you. And if you don't have the money, you don't get it. The poor die first. What I'm basically saying to you is, we're all ahead of that line. Remember, we started this from a global perspective. Everybody that has the ability to type into a computer, regardless of how you're disproportionately affected, how we are disproportionately affected in America, we're all ahead of that. They're living off of, in some context, 50 cents per day. Now, every country in Africa is not like that, but the Ugandan system is. So what do we do about that? Because we had issues with the people that were ahead of us that could be doing better. Now, what about us? We are ahead of some folks. Are we going to look back and say, hey, let's figure out a way for us all to get access? Or are we just going to worry about our own personal access? All right, Haiti, do you have anything for us as we conclude?
Yes, so for those who did raise your hand, please make sure that at least one of you is in this training time next Wednesday at 10 a.m. If you are not, we can talk that offline, but at least one of you has to be in this training. And that's it. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Kendra, I think you might have wanted to chat. I'll stay on if you would like to chat. Okay, or did you want to chat via email? What's more convenient for you? Okay, hold on. Let me get you unmuted there.
Yeah, I had to come off mute. Sorry.
Okay.
I guess I could talk to you via email.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
Okay. You still have it, correct?
I should. You can
Okay,
give it to me again.
You want me to give it to you now? Or you want me to type it in the chat?
You can give it to me now.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. It's CL Butler at engagingsolutions.net. So just how it sounds, all one word. So CL and then Butler like the university. Yeah. And then it's at engaging solutions with an S.
With an S.
Yeah.
Okay.
engagingsolutions.net.
Okay.
And if for some reason you didn't write it down correctly, that's okay. Haiti knows how to get in contact with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day, Kendra.
You too.
Okay. Okay. Let me, do you have a second? I'll lock the room if you do. Let me stop our recording.